Have you ever felt so ignored that you started to believe no one would notice if you disappeared? Donna Celeste, 72 years old, walked down the street as if she had become accustomed to being invisible. Every day, at the same time, with the same little bag of bread, she crossed the sidewalk offering a shy smile. She was always the first to wish good morning, and almost always the only one to receive nothing in return. The neighbors hurried past, avoiding her as if avoiding a weak breeze. The children whispered, calling her the strange old woman from the blue house. The adults shook their heads, commenting that she was too lonely, too quiet, too strange. But no one knew the truth. No one knew the magnitude of the pain that woman carried. Behind the slow steps and tired gaze, there was a mother who lost her only son to an accident she never overcame. A retired seamstress who once helped half the neighborhood without anyone remembering. A woman whom life left behind, and whom the neighborhood made a point of forgetting. Celeste didn't complain. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't expect anything. She believed that, with time, all people become invisible to the world, especially those with hearts too good to attract attention. But everything changed on a sweltering summer afternoon. She was returning from the market when she heard a short, desperate, choked sound. A stifled cry. A plea for help so fragile that anyone would have ignored it as a common street noise. But not her. Her heart, trained by the sensitivity of pain, recognized it immediately. It was the cry of a child in danger. She looked around. Cars passing by, neighbors chatting, loud music coming from a garage, and nobody, absolutely nobody, seemed to hear. Celeste, the invisible woman, heard, and she ran. She went to the gate of the most arrogant family in the neighborhood and saw 4-year-old Miguel trapped between the bars, breathless, weak, struggling to breathe. And in that second, she understood a painful truth. If I don't do anything, nobody will. In that minute, the woman no one saw became the only hope of an entire life. Donna Celeste's story didn't begin with silence, nor with isolation, much less with sadness. Before becoming the forgotten lady of the street, she was a woman full of life, dreams, faith, and hope. She was born into a simple family, surrounded by difficulties, but guided by solid values, respect, kindness, and honesty. Her mother always said, "Daughter, good people don't need applause. They need a clear conscience." And Celeste carried this phrase as her compass throughout her life. In her youth, she worked as a seamstress in a small neighborhood workshop. She was quick with her hands, talented, delicate, and many clients insisted that little Celeste sew their clothes. The noise of the machines was part of her world, and she felt proud to transform simple fabrics into something beautiful. While still young, she met the great love of her life, Jonas, a humble, hardworking young man with a shy smile and a heart as kind as hers. They married on a serene late afternoon in the town's small church, surrounded by only a few people, but with such great happiness that it seemed to fill every empty space. From their union, Daniel, their only son, was born, and that boy became the center of her life. Being a mother was her deepest mission. It was her reason for living. She made a point of being present in every detail. The first step, the first tooth, the first scribbled notebook at school. She was the kind of mother who didn't need to be seen to love, it was enough to feel. But fate, always unpredictable, took Jonas away too soon. A heart problem, quick and violent, left Celeste a widow at 39. The pain was so intense that, for weeks, she thought she wouldn't be able to go on. But her son, just a teenager at the time, held her hand and said, "Mom, we're going to be okay." Dad wanted this, and she believed him. She started working harder, sewing more, saving more. She did everything so that Daniel would have a better life. She never complained. She never said, "I'm tired," even when, at night, her body screamed in pain. Her love was silent but strong as iron. When Daniel became an adult, he started working and building his own life. Celeste was proud. It was as if everything had been worthwhile. But fate, once again, was cruel. A motorcycle accident took the young man from her on a rainy night. And on that day, Celeste's world crumbled irreparably. Losing her husband was a wound. Losing her son was losing her heart. For months, she lived as if breathing without knowing why. The house, once full of laughter, became a silent museum of memories. The smell of coffee seemed more bitter. The bed seemed bigger than it should be. And life seemed impossible. When the pain became unbearable, she decided she needed to start over. She left the old house, full of painful memories, and went to live in another neighborhood, further away, quieter, where she could try to exist again. She arrived there with hope. She thought she could make friends, that she could create new bonds, that perhaps, with time, the emptiness would lessen. But the reception wasn't as she imagined. The neighbors, too busy with their lives, didn't give her space. The conversations were quick, forced, or non-existent. Some watched her through the window, suspicious. Others simply pretended she wasn't there. Celeste, already suffering from the pain of loss, began to feel another pain, that of social abandonment. The pain of existing in a place where no one sees you. The pain of trying to smile and not seeing a smile returned. Even so, she remained herself. Kind, polite, calm, patient. Even though the street didn't reciprocate her good morning, she didn't stop offering it. Even though the children mocked her, she didn't lose her tenderness. Even though the adults whispered, she didn't hold a grudge, because Celeste knew much greater pain. The ignorance of others wasn't capable of destroying her, but something began to change within her. Loneliness, which had once been a consequence of life, now also seemed a consequence of society. She walked, sewed, tended to the plants, made tea, but she felt she lived in a house no one knew existed. It was as if she had become invisible, a shadow passing through the street without echoing, a name no one remembered, a presence no one noticed. And deep down, she began to believe that perhaps it was indeed so. Perhaps the lives of certain people were meant to go unnoticed. Perhaps some stories were destined to be silent, until the day it happened, until the stifling afternoon, until Miguel's cry. Because at that moment, of all the people on the street, only she, the invisible woman, heard the sound that no one else heard. And it was there, in that instant, that destiny showed Celeste that even the most ignored lives can carry within them the courage that transforms everything around them. Donna Celeste's routine was so simple that few on the street perceived the greatness hidden within her. Every morning, before the sun fully touched the sidewalks, she would open the window of her small rented house, take a deep breath, and give thanks for another day. It was a silent, almost sacred ritual. In her chest was a heart mended by loss, but still capable of gratitude. She would prepare her chamomile tea, place 2 slices of toast on her plate, and sit at the table, always looking at the empty chair in front of her. That chair still carried the memory of her son. It was her way of keeping alive the love that never died. After coffee, Celeste would rub some balm on her hands, aged but firm, and walk to her small makeshift studio. She sewed for others. She fixed hems, adjusted dresses, repaired zippers. Simple work, but done with care and dignity, like everything she touched. At midday, she would take her cloth bag and walk to the corner grocery store, always on the same side of the street, always with a calm step, always offering a shy smile to passers-by. But the neighbors rarely noticed. It was as if the world saw everything except her. Some looked away, pretending to be busy on their cell phones. Others simply passed by without answering her. And the children, innocent in the ignorance they learned from adults, sometimes ran up saying, "Look, the strange old woman." Celeste pretended not to hear, but she heard. She always heard. The weight of those words hurt more than any pain in her spine or knee. Because it wasn't just rudeness. It was proof that her loneliness wasn't a product of life, it was a product of people. Even so, she didn't stop being kind. She believed that each good morning offered was a seed planted, even if no one let it sprout. And it was in this routine of social invisibility that she tried to fit in. When she arrived home with her groceries always few, always cheap, she made lunch in silence. She turned on the old radio to ward off the feeling of emptiness. She sewed a little more. In the afternoon, she sat on the porch to feel the wind on her face. And every day, she observed the neighborhood as if watching a movie she wasn't part of. Parents taking their children to school, couples arguing over trivial things, neighbors gathering to chat but never inviting Celeste. That street had life, but no life that included hers. And she tried to accept it. She tried to believe that, after so many losses, fate only wanted to give her peace. Even if that peace came in the form of silence. But there was something inside Celeste that wouldn't be silenced. The desire to be useful, the need to love someone, the maternal instinct that never ceased to exist, even after Daniel's death. Sometimes she would pass by the square and see the children playing. Their laughter was like music that warmed her heart. But she never approached. She was afraid someone would say she was intruding or ruining the moment. It was like living behind an invisible glass. She saw everyone, but no one saw her. And so the days passed, between sewing, tea, silence, and a small but vivid hope that something would change. The truth is, Celeste didn't want to be the center of attention. She just wanted to exist for someone. She wanted to be remembered. She wanted the world to realize that, behind that slow-walking lady, there was an immense story full of love, pain, courage, and life. But the neighborhood was harsh, rigid, closed in on itself. And the more they ignored Celeste, the more she withdrew. It was a sad cycle. She tried to get closer. The world moved away. She retreated even further. But behind all this loneliness, there was something she didn't even realize. Her heart, silent and invisible, would be the only one capable of moving the entire street. When destiny decided to place a child's life in her hands, that hot afternoon, Celeste woke up with a different feeling. The air seemed heavy. The silence was more vivid than usual. Even the birdsong seemed muffled. She made her coffee, sewed for a few hours, and realized she was restless, as if something was about to happen. Something big, something nameless. Around 4 in the afternoon, she decided to go to the bakery to buy fresh bread. She put on her comfortable slippers, adjusted her headscarf, and left. Each step seemed to echo louder than usual. The neighbors were scattered, some in cars, others in doorways, others in windows, all too busy to notice the woman crossing the street with her cloth bag. She followed her usual route, observing everything in silence. And that's when it happened. In the middle of the street lived the proudest family in the neighborhood. The biggest house, the most expensive car, the tallest gate. And it was from there that the sound came. A muffled cry. Short, desperate. Celeste stopped. Her heart raced. She looked around. No one had heard. Or, if they had, they pretended not to have heard. She approached. The cry became clearer. And that's where the story changed. Because at that moment, well before the tragedy that almost happened, Celeste realized something she had never noticed on the street. Someone's life depended on her. And that was the first time in a long time that it had happened. The muffled cry echoed again. This time weaker, more urgent, more desperate. Celeste stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, her heart pounding in the rhythm of the rush. That sound, that trapped cry, was a child's. And instinctively, she ran. She ran like she hadn't run in years. She ran with trembling legs, her bag swaying, her chest burning. But she ran because she knew, deep down, that no one else would run. When she reached the gate of the big house that always seemed so proud of itself, she saw the scene that chilled her blood. Miguel, the 4-year-old boy, always seen playing in the yard, was trapped between the iron bars. His little face was purple, his little arms trembled, his breathing was shallow. Tears streamed down, mixed with the dust of the ground. And he was alone, completely alone. Celeste looked around, no adults nearby. Gate closed, house locked, car absent. And neighbors, passing by, averting their gaze, pretending not to see, or thinking it wasn't their problem. She approached slowly, trying not to frighten him. "My dear, calm down. Auntie's here," she said in the softest voice she could manage. Miguel tried to speak, but only a scratchy sound came out. He tried to breathe and couldn't. His head was literally trapped between 2 bars of the gate, and every movement worsened the suffocation. Celeste knelt down without thinking about her own aching knee, without thinking about her age, without thinking if they would accuse her. She only thought about saving the child. "Breathe, my love, breathe," she repeated, while trying to push the bars apart with her hands. But the iron was heavy, rigid, and she was just an old woman, invisible, frail, alone. Or perhaps not as frail as she thought. Celeste forced her body, put her arm between the bars, tried to turn the boy's head. Her blouse got caught on a nail. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Her hands trembled. But she continued. "Stay with me, Miguel. Look at me. Look at me," she pleaded, her voice choked with emotion. The boy blinked slowly, as if giving up the fight. Celeste felt a deep panic invade her chest, a feeling she had only felt once in her life, the day she lost her son. And it was that memory, painful, eternal, that ignited within her a strength that no indifferent neighborhood could imagine. She placed her feet on the ground, gripped the bars with both hands, and pulled with all the strength she had. And for a second, she swore the iron gave way. "Go on, Miguel. Try to turn around, my dear. Try to turn around. That's it. That's it." She guided carefully, tenderly, desperately. The boy cried, but the crying was already a sign of life, of hope. Celeste changed position. She took off her sandal for more support. She pushed with her knee. She pulled with her arms. She took a deep breath, like someone about to move a mountain. And in that moment, moving just a few centimeters of iron, she truly moved it. With a slight, almost imperceptible snap, Miguel's head finally slid through the bars. The boy fell straight into her arms, breathless, limping, cold. Celeste felt despair rise in her throat like fire. "Miguel, Miguel, breathe," she pleaded, gently shaking him. She put her mouth close to his little face to detect any sign. Nothing. Tears began to fall. But she didn't give up. She held him against her chest and began to massage his back. "Please, come back to me. Come back to me. Come back to me," she said, her voice breaking. And then, a weak moan, then a sigh, then a soft, scratchy cry, but full of life. Miguel began to breathe again. Celeste fell to her knees, hugging him tightly, crying as if reborn together, her head resting on the top of his head, two fragile hearts beating in sync. And at that moment, at that exact instant, no one else existed in the world. Not neighbors, not judgments, not loneliness, not invisibility. Only her, and the boy she had just saved. It took a few minutes for someone to notice the commotion. A neighbor came out onto the balcony, but instead of helping, she only observed from afar, as if seeing something strange. "Celeste, is everything all right there?" she asked coldly. Celeste didn't answer. She didn't even notice. She was too busy supporting Miguel, wiping his tears with her own handkerchief, trying to calm him down while hugging him. Some neighbors approached slowly, but none of them dared to intervene, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of shame, perhaps because they had never really paid attention to her. And for the first time, they looked at Celeste without disdain, but with astonishment, because the strange old woman was there, kneeling, barefoot, sweaty, trembling, but heroic. Heroic as no one had ever imagined she could be. Miguel, still shaken, squeezed her arm and whispered, "Auntie, don't leave me." And the tears that Celeste tried to hold back flowed. "Never, my dear, never." She stayed there, with him in her lap, until she heard hurried footsteps, his parents finally arriving, desperate, shouting their son's name. And without her realizing it, the unjust judgment that would come later was beginning to form behind their eyes. But at that moment, at that instant, the whole world fit in Celeste's arms. The world, and a child who was only alive because an invisible lady decided to see what no one else saw. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the street, and suddenly, Celeste was no longer alone. Miguel's mother appeared first, her face distraught, her breathing uneven, the key trembling in her hand as she tried to open the gate. The father came right behind, desperate, sweating, shouting his son's name as if the echo would bring him back. When they saw the scene, Miguel in Celeste's arms, crying softly, still trembling, their first reaction wasn't gratitude. It was panic, confusion, and worse than that, it was distrust. "What happened here?" the mother shouted, her voice cutting through the air. Miguel stretched his little arm out to her, but remained clinging to Celeste's shoulder as if afraid to let go. Celeste tried to explain, in a soft voice, he was stuck in the gate. He couldn't breathe. "I just helped." But the mother interrupted, her eyes wide, her face burning with despair. "What do you mean, stuck? Did you move him? Did you touch him?" Celeste blinked, startled. Her heart tightened. I just took him out of the bars. He was suffocating." The father, still in shock, anxiously examined the boy, running his hand over his head, looking at every inch as if he were seeing a ghost. "Why were you with him?" she asked in a harsh tone that didn't match the gratitude she expected. Celeste took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. I heard the crying. Nobody came out. I did what anyone would do, but the people on that street were always quick to judge and slow to understand. The neighbor from the balcony came down the stairs and approached, crossing her arms. I heard her calling the boy my dear, she said, as if it were an accusation. It even seemed like she was holding him without permission. Celeste felt the air leave her breath. The injustice hit her like a slap. I was just calming him down, she tried to explain. But Miguel's mother was already crying, nervous, scared, unable to separate fear from reason. My God! My son passed out at the gate and this woman here, holding him, she sobbed, covering her mouth with her hand. That phrase, this woman, cut Celeste like a knife, as if she were a dangerous stranger. As if she weren't the same person who, minutes before, had risked her knee, spine, arms, an entire soul to prevent a tragedy. Miguel tried to speak through tears. Mommy, I was trapped. Aunt Celeste saved me. But his parents' nervousness was so great that they didn't even hear him. Let's take him inside, the father said, without looking at her. He quickly took the boy from Celeste's lap, almost snatching the little one from her arms. The feeling was like losing a child for the second time. Miguel stretched his little hand behind him, calling, Auntie, Aunt. But the front door closed before Celeste could answer. Silence. A heavy, cruel silence that weighed on her shoulders like lead. And the neighbors? The same ones who passed by her every day without noticing her existence. Now they whispered. They observed. They judged. Strange thing. One murmured. Could she have exaggerated the help? Said another. I always thought she was kind of different, a woman commented, lowering her voice. Celeste felt her face burn. She felt her heart wither. She felt the world slowly spin as if everything were moving away from her. She stood up slowly, her legs trembling. The bread bag lay on the floor, open, with 2 small loaves of bread soiled with sand. She picked it up with the same dignity she always carried, even when no one was watching. But at that moment, for the first time, Celeste felt ashamed to exist there. The tears came silently, hot, burning. She tried to swallow the sob, lift her head, appear strong, but it hurt more than any physical pain. Because it wasn't just injustice. It was rejection. It was ingratitude. It was confirmation that, for that neighborhood, she would always be the stranger, the invisible one, the weird old lady, and now, the suspect. As she began walking back home, she heard someone say behind her, It's a good thing you arrived in time. Who knows what could have happened? The ground disappeared beneath her feet. The air felt heavy. The whole world seemed small, cold, cruel. She entered the house slowly, almost without strength. She closed the door carefully, rested her forehead against the wood, and let the tears finally fall, the tears that had been trapped, accumulated, full of pain and injustice. My God, she whispered, her voice trembling. I did what I could. I did the right thing. But deep down, she knew, doing the right thing doesn't always bring recognition. Sometimes it brings loneliness. She sat in the living room chair, hugging her own hands. She looked at the photos of her son hanging on the wall. If you were here, you would believe me, she murmured. The loneliness weighed so heavily that she feared she would never leave the house again. For the first time, Celeste wondered, did I make a mistake in helping? But then a harsher, sadder thought crossed her mind. Maybe I shouldn't get involved in anything. Nobody here wants me to exist. She wiped her eyes, drying the tears. At that moment, she swore to herself, I won't go out anymore. I won't talk to anyone anymore. I won't try anymore. The street she had walked for years invisible had just proven that it could be even crueler when it finally paid attention to her. Celeste curled up on the sofa, her heart heavy, believing that this day would be remembered as the worst of her life. Little did she know that this was only the darkness before dawn, and that the truth that Miguel would bring when he regained his voice would still come as light piercing the shadows. The sun was already rising when little Miguel opened his eyes. The room was silent, with the soft sound of a fan spinning in the corner. His mother slept in the armchair beside him, exhausted from the fright of the previous night. His father, sitting on the floor, dozed against the bed. Miguel blinked slowly, still weak, trying to understand why his chest hurt when he breathed. The scene came quickly, the bars, the tightness, the despair. And then came the face of the one who saved him. "Aunt Celeste," he whispered, almost voiceless. But his mother woke up at that same instant. "Son, my God, you're awake," she said, relieved, showering him with kisses. His father woke up soon after, hugging the boy, emotional. "How are you? Can you breathe better?" he asked. Miguel nodded, and before he could be interrupted, he spoke in one breath, as if he needed to release what was burning in his chest. "Aunt Celeste saved me. She pulled me out of the gate. I was trapped. I was scared. And she pulled me out." His parents froze. The words hammered like a hammer in the silent air of the room. "What?" his mother asked, confused. "Son, are you sure?" Miguel looked at her with the transparent heart of a child who doesn't know how to lie. It was her. The father swallowed hard. The weight of shame fell upon him like a block of stone. And there, that morning, began the path back to the truth. Half an hour later, the parents were already at Celeste's door. The whole neighborhood had heard them rushing out. The neighbors, curious as always, opened gates, leaned against the walls, whispered, tried to understand the reason for the urgency. But unlike the previous day, the crowd carried a different kind of energy. It wasn't distrust. It was unease. It was suspicion that the judgment had been hasty, cruel, unjust. The doorbell rang once, twice, 3 times. No one answered. Celeste was sitting on the sofa, her heart heavy, her eyes swollen from crying so much. When she heard the insistent sound, she thought, "They've come to complain again," and her chest tightened. But the doorbell rang again. "Mrs. Celeste, please, open the door," said Miguel's mother's voice, with a different tone, softer, more humble. Celeste hesitated. She took a deep breath. She stood up slowly. She walked to the door with short, tired steps. When she opened it, she saw the whole neighborhood gathered. And in front of everyone, Miguel's parents, the same ones who had accused her, who had looked at her with suspicion, who had almost made her believe she had done something wrong. Miguel was in his father's lap, his little arms outstretched towards her. "Aunt Celeste," he smiled, sincere, radiant. Celeste felt tears burning her eyes. No one had ever called that name with such affection. The boy's mother stepped forward. Her eyes were red not with anger now, but with regret. "Mrs. Celeste," she began, her voice breaking. We made a terrible mistake yesterday. You saved my son's life, and we accused you, judged you, hurt you." She stopped, swallowing her sobs. "I will never forgive myself for this." The father approached as well. "If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't be here. We failed. They failed as parents. They failed as neighbors. They failed as human beings." A dense silence filled the street. The neighbors, one by one, lowered their heads, overcome with shame. Celeste said nothing. She couldn't. The emotion in her throat was too great, too deep to fit into words. It was then that Miguel stretched out his little hand and touched her face. "Don't cry, Auntie," he said, with the pure innocence that only children possess. "I told Mom and Dad that you saved me." Celeste broke down. But she didn't break down in sadness. She broke down in relief. That child, so small, had been more just, more humane, more honest than all the adults in that neighborhood. The next scene was unexpected even by the neighbors. Miguel's mother knelt before Celeste. "Forgive me," she said, crying. "Forgive me for everything I said, for everything I thought, for everything I did to you." It was a powerful image. A young woman, surrounded by people, knelt before an elderly woman who had always been ignored. The father did the same soon after. "We don't deserve forgiveness, but we needed to ask for it." The neighbors, who had previously avoided even looking at Celeste, now approached with trembling hands, their expressions full of guilt. "Mrs. Celeste, I said something stupid yesterday," said one. "I'm sorry, I misjudged you," said another. "I'll never treat you like that again," murmured a young man. And so, the whole street bowed before the truth, not because they wanted to seem good, not for appearances, not because of pressure, but because their conscience weighed heavily. And Miguel had been the mirror that showed the ugliness of the unjust judgment. Celeste watched everything with a heavy heart. Part of her wanted to retreat, to protect herself, to keep her distance. Late affections hurt too. Requests for forgiveness are sometimes like coarse salt on open wounds. But the other part, the part that still knew how to love, even after so much abandonment, that part rose up within her. She wiped her face with a trembling hand. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, she spoke firmly. I didn't need thanks. I just wanted someone to have listened. Absolute silence. No one dared interrupt. When I saw Miguel imprisoned, I only thought of my son. I thought that if someone had heard his cries that day, her voice trembled, maybe he would be alive. The neighborhood felt the weight of that revelation. Some clutched their chests, others closed their eyes. Her pain was finally seen. Finally, it was acknowledged. Celeste continued, I don't blame you for not knowing me, but it hurts. It hurts to be ignored. It hurts to be treated as if I don't exist. More silence. Hard. Cutting. Miguel's mother sobbed. You exist, and you saved what I hold most precious. Miguel approached her again, embracing her legs. You're my friend, he said, and that phrase, so simple, opened something inside her that had been closed for years. Celeste placed her hand on the boy's head, gently stroking it. Thank you, my love, she murmured. When she lifted her face, she saw everyone looking at her with respect. Not pity, not obligation, respect. That woman, that invisible old woman who walked along the sidewalks as if she were the wind, had become the heart of that street. And in that instant, the entire neighborhood understood something powerful. Discreet kindness is the hardest to see and the rarest. And Celeste had always been rare. The news spread so quickly through the neighborhood that, in a few hours, even those who had never glanced at Celeste knew that she had saved little Miguel. It wasn't long before an unexpected movement began to emerge. People started to notice her, really notice her, not as a shadow passing by on the sidewalks, but as someone who existed, felt, breathed, suffered, and had far more value than anyone had imagined. The next day, when Celeste went out to buy bread, something happened that she hadn't expected in years. A neighbor smiled at her. Good morning, Dona Celeste. The voice was soft, almost timid, as if she were learning to pronounce respect for the first time. Celeste stood still for a moment, unsure how to respond. The greeting was simple, but it seemed bigger than an apology. She returned the smile, small, discreet, and continued walking. Over the hours, more things changed. On her way home, she found two children sitting on the wall, waiting for her. Are you the girl who saved Miguel? One of them asked, their eyes shining. Celeste laughed softly. It had been a long time since a child had spoken to her without mockery. I'm just Celeste, my love, she said affectionately. I only did what any person with a heart would do. The child shook their head, disagreeing with the innocent conviction of someone who still believes in good. Nobody did. Only you. That phrase stuck in her heart like a planted seed. Later, Miguel's parents appeared again, not with tears this time, but with true humility. They brought cake, flowers, and choked back words. You deserve more than apologies, said the father, his voice firm. You deserve recognition, the mother added. We were blind, and you saw where no one else wanted to see. Celeste, however, didn't want tributes. She only wanted peace. And the feeling of finally being seen was more than enough. I didn't do anything expecting anything in return, she replied sincerely. I did it because I learned that when you see someone suffering, you don't turn your face away. Miguel's mother cried again, this time not from guilt, but from gratitude. And so, little by little, the neighborhood that had previously avoided her began to change its relationship with her. It wasn't false adoration, nor an attempt to compensate for the past overnight. It was respect. Real respect. Respect that is born when the truth finally finds space to flourish. The days that followed were lighter than she had felt in years. One of the neighbors appeared, offering help to fix up the neglected garden. Let me lend a hand, Mrs. Celeste. The lady has already done more for us than you can imagine. She refused at first, out of habit. Then she allowed it and realized that for the first time, she wasn't a burden to anyone. She was someone worthy of care. Another neighbor brought fresh vegetables from her yard and said, I should have come here much sooner. Will you forgive me? And Celeste, with the spirituality of someone who knows that holding grudges sickens the heart, replied, Of course I forgive you. Forgiveness liberates both the giver and the receiver. The whole neighborhood began to see in her something that had always been there. A wise, sweet, courageous woman, capable of loving even when she didn't receive love in return. But the most beautiful change came from Miguel. Every day, he would slip out the front door and run to her house, clapping his hands. "Aunt Celeste, may I come in?" She would open her arms, and the little boy would run straight into her lap without fear, without prejudice, without reservations. In that embrace, she felt something she hadn't felt since losing her own son, the warmth of innocent love. It still hurt, but that pain was different. It was a pain that was beginning to heal. "You know you're always welcome," she would say, adjusting his hair. Miguel loved listening to stories, and Celeste, who held a whole world within her, began to recount adventures, memories, and lessons from the past. He listened to every word as if it were the most important thing in the world. And it was, at least for her. As the weeks passed, something special happened. Celeste ceased to be invisible, not because she became a heroine, not because she saved a life, but because, finally, people saw her worth. The same children who laughed at her now asked for help with homework. The same neighbors who whispered now asked for advice and recipes. The same adults who turned their faces away now made a point of calling her for short chats at the gate. She hadn't sought any of that, but she received it all with silent gratitude. And for the first time in many years, Celeste felt like she belonged. She felt she had a place. She felt she was no longer walking alone through the streets of life. One calm afternoon, she was sitting on the porch having tea when Miguel appeared running again. "Grandma Celeste!" he shouted instinctively. The name slipped from his lips without thinking. His father, who was following closely behind, widened his eyes, embarrassed. "Miguel, son, don't talk like that." She might not like it, but Celeste interrupted him with a smile so tender that even the wind seemed to stop to listen. "I did like it," she said, tears glistening. "I liked it very much." Miguel jumped into her lap, laughing, and she hugged him as if holding life in both hands. That simple, spontaneous gesture erased years of loneliness, silence, and indifference. For the first time, her heart no longer seemed empty. It seemed full of something she thought she would never feel again: affection. And that night, as she closed the windows and turned off the lights in the house, Celeste realized a profound truth. She didn't need to change who she was to be respected. She didn't need to feign strength to be recognized. She didn't need to demand love to receive it. She only needed to continue being who she always was, a woman who sees what others ignore, a good soul that no one saw, a giant heart hidden behind timid steps. And now, the world finally saw. The street had returned to its usual silence, but inside Celeste's house something remained lit a flame she believed she had lost forever. It wasn't pride. It wasn't vanity. It was something much rarer: belonging. As she slowly closed the curtains, she felt her heart lighten in a way she almost didn't recognize. For years, she carried the feeling of being invisible, that her life passed unnoticed like a weak breeze through the trees. The neighborhood saw her as a shadow, silent, strange, isolated. But that whole story left a lesson that transcends any age, any street, any life. No one is too small to be important. No one is too invisible to be missed. The truth is, behind every silent person, there is a whole world hidden. And no one there imagined the magnitude of the world Celeste carried within her heart: the pain of a mother who lost her son, the strength of a woman who went through life without asking for anything, and the courage of someone who, even ignored, remained good. The neighborhood learned this the day a child was in danger, and only she saw, only she heard, only she cared. And that says it all, because character doesn't appear when someone is being observed. It appears when no one is. That neighborhood, which previously turned its face away, understood a profound lesson. Silent kindness is the one that saves the most, and the one that transforms the most. Celeste's life didn't change because she did something grand. It changed because she did what few do. She heard the cry of someone who couldn't ask for help. And that is true heroism. And now, looking out the window where Miguel used to sit and tell her stories, Celeste finally understood. She had never been invisible. She was just surrounded by people who couldn't see. But now they could see. And for you listening to this story, here's a thought you might need to hear today. How many incredible people have you ignored? Just because they speak too softly? Maybe there's a Celeste in your building, on your street, in your family, or even inside you. And maybe it's time to see her or let yourself be seen. Because, in the end, life always reveals who you really are, not by what you say, but by what you do when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, I ask you, comment, like, and follow the channel. Here, you'll never hear empty stories. Here, we celebrate real lives. Strong, silent, wronged, invisible women, but who carry entire worlds within themselves. And if you follow the channel, you become part of a community that embraces these stories, a community of women and men who believe that empathy transforms everything. Follow, comment, share, because stories like Celeste's deserve to resonate. And perhaps, someone you love needs to hear this today.